Hey everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer, Tucker Sennett, here to discuss NC State basketball as we wind down the regular season, the ACC season here. Um, NC State still firmly pushing for the NCAA tournament, firmly pushing for a top four finish in the regular season for that double bye in the ACC tournament. But today I want to discuss the importance of a critical NCAA tournament metric. These metrics are super important when it comes to the selection process for the NCAA tournament. For every team, there's a something they call a team sheet that they look at. They go through, kind of the profile of a team, both from a statistical standpoint and from other things. But there are seven key metrics that show up on these team sheets. That can be things like the net ranking and some of the other predictive metrics that are very popular and become a major point of discussion over the course of a college basketball season. The one that's gotten particular traction of late is something called wins above bubble. Now, NC State is in an interesting, somewhat precarious situation when it comes to wins above bubble. Will Wade talked about it on his Wolfpack Weekly radio show. It's become one of those metrics that's sort of the hot button topic these days, mainly because the committee has indicated that it is an important one. So let me explain to you what wins above bubble means, what its importance is, just so you have a better understanding before I dive into what NC State is. So it's a resume-based metric that doesn't include victory margin or margin of victory and things like that, things of that nature that some of the other metrics include, like KenPom and the net. That sort of boils things down into a little bit more of a simpler understanding of what wins and losses can do to a team. It compares teams' schedules to what the bubble, the NCAA tournament bubble, which is, the usually the 45th team in the net. It compares what your schedule, so in this case, what NC State's schedule and results are, to whatever that bubble team is in a given year. So it's a fluctuating currency, and your success is somewhat dependent on the success of the teams that you've either beaten or lost to. If you lose to a team like Virginia, you're not going to be affected greatly in wins above bubble because, that's not a game that a bubble team is going to win. It boils down to it's a combination of, the opponent's strength plus the location of the game. And then it places a 0-1 score on each game that essentially determines how likely a bubble team or number 45 team in the net would be to win said game. So bubble team's super unlikely to beat a team like Virginia. So is NC State. NC State's loss to Virginia in that case was a negative 0.15 win above bubble score. So things aren't affected greatly in that sense. That's kind of your generic explanation. Now we can dive in more to the NC State part of things. NC State ranks number 34 in wins above bubble. That trails teams like UCLA right above them. Miami of Ohio, an interesting one for sure. A bunch of Big Ten schools. NC State's sixth in the ACC in wins above bubble. So they are at a 1.87 wins above bubble. That used to be a strength of NC State's resume, and I'll get to why in a little bit, but it's still not a disaster. However, teams in the top 25 in wins above bubble, since they've been tracking the stat, tend to have greater NCAA tournament success and also tend to be a little bit safer in terms of where they are seeded and just making the tournament in general. So it would be preferable, if you're an NC State fan or if you're Will Wade, that you improve this number a little bit, even though some of the other metric systems view you fairly favorably. And that's a lot of that is just the way the Wolfpack won games early in the season. and the way that they continue to win games with a high-powered offense and typically a pretty metric-friendly style when things are going right. From a results standpoint, NC State has some good wins. Unfortunately, these wins were better at a different point. The prime example of this is that January 20th win of at Clemson. This was a hard fought game against a ranked opponent that looked like they were going to be in the mix for a top four seed in the ACC. The problem for NC State is even though that's still a quadrant 1A that has a plus 0.72 wins above bubble score, this is a game uh, that has sort of taken on water. And Will Wade brought this up um, on the Wolfpack Weekly radio show last night. So the wins above bubble score for that game has dipped significantly because of how the rest of Clemson's season has gone. So what went from a top win in the country on this metric has dipped quite a bit. SMU, another win that has kind of fluctuated currency wise. And things could shake out where SMU finishes pretty high in the ACC and has a couple good wins down the stretch here, or they could get bounced in the first round of the ACC tournament, and then the win above bubble score for that game gets messed up quite a bit. Then there's the flip side of this. A game like Georgia Tech, which has not won, I believe, since they beat NC State in the Lenovo Center. That game holds a wins above bubble value of negative 0.92. So that's almost a full game sinking NC State. That is fairly unacceptable in terms of this metric. That's something that will really, really hurt. Given how the season has gone, because NC State simply doesn't have a lot of great wins. There's definitely some ones that are looking better, but that North Carolina win doesn't get a ton of love from this metric, and primarily because it's a home game and they're not too dissimilar. They're relatively close in the rankings, so it's a problematic situation, but it's not the end of the world, and it can still be improved. NC State can go add a little bit of credit there with a lower tier win against Notre Dame on Saturday. It could come back and beat Duke on Monday and fly up this chart, because that would be such a highly valued win. Even though it's at home, it's against the number one wins above bubble team in the country, or excuse me, number two. Duke's right behind Michigan with a 10.28. So, you can really, really increase your view or your outlook with this one metric based on what the NCAA tournament committee is looking at. The most recent sort of controversy and sort of the shift towards this was letting North Carolina in the tournament field in 2025. That was a decision that got a lot of blowback after they, really struggled in quadrant one games on the net and just weren't really an awesome team last year. They still get in because they had a fairly successful wins above bubble rate in 2025, in the 2024-2025 season. Overcomplicated for sure. Definitely in the grand scheme of things, boils things down fairly simply. And NC State can still fluctuate quite a bit in this particular metric. And I think, we wouldn't be talking about it too much if Will Wade didn't bring up that he was concerned about it on his radio show. So all things considered, not the end of the world for the Pack here, but definitely a metric to watch as we steam towards Selection Sunday and the NCAA tournament, as well as the ACC tournament, because the Pack has some work to do. It's that simple. As always, I really appreciate you all tuning in to the NC State Insider Podcast. That's all I got for you today. Feel free to follow me on X at Senate Tucker. You can also follow our website on X at Wolfpack on SI. and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more episodes of the NC State Insider Podcast. That is the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel. Great content there. Love doing these. Love talking to you. Really appreciate the comments and the engagement on the last few podcasts. So we'll keep them coming for you. And of course, see you next time.